Now, what you see here is the training course data for Teton Grand. This is all the data for the various categories. Now, the category that we will be focusing on to calculate the z-scores is I-21, which is the final grades of all the participants. Now, what I did was I copied this entire column and put it into a new spreadsheet just to make things a little more clear and simple while we're trying to compute the z-scores. So you'll see that the grades are all here from A2 to A502. So in order to compute the z-score, you will need both the mean and the standard deviation. And so we'll be using the formula bar a lot to compute the z-score. So in order to get the mean, you have either two options. You could click on this, or you can click on the insert function button, either or, and they'll pop up the same menu. So here you would be searching for average to search for the mean. You could either type it in here, or you could search by it through category. So if you go into statistical, you'll find that the average is right there. So if we click on that, now this brings up another menu, and this is essentially asking you what do you want to take the average of. So we want the average of all the grades. So you could either type it in here, or you could just go over here, select that, and drag it all the way down to 502. And just hit OK, and we should have a mean of 80.01. So I've actually put these two cells into 2 decimal points. You might come up with 5 or what have you, but if you go into format cells, right click format cells, go into number, and you could set your decimal places to whatever you deem necessary. So in order to calculate the standard deviation, we can do the same thing. Let's go through this. I have it under, you could do a search, but I have it under most recently used. So it's STDEV is the acronym that Excel uses. So if we click on that, hit OK. Now we could drag in and select like we did previously, but we already know what cells we need to pick. So I'm just going to go ahead and type it in and hit OK. So we see that the mean is 80.01 and the standard deviation is 12.47. Now, in order to calculate the z-score, we could either type in the actual formula. So we would type in e or equals under the function bar, bracket. It would be the number or the value x, or I'm sorry, the value of a2 minus the mean bracket divided by sigma or the standard deviation, which will populate the z-score. So we know that the z-score for 93 is 1.04, which makes sense. If you look at the mean, which is the starting point, which is always 0, and you add 12, you would know that it's about 82.48, which is, I'm sorry, 92.48, which is close to 93, and we know that's about 1 standard deviation. So it makes sense. Now, the other way you could do is click on function, and for z-scores, you click on standardize, hit OK, and so it brings up the menu. So it wants the x value, we know it's this one, the mean, which is E1, standard deviation, which is E2. And we know that the mean is always the starting point at 0, and so this individual got an 80 on the exam, and so it has a z-score of 0, which makes sense. Now, to make things easier, rather than going one by one, you can actually select this and drag it all the way down. However, if we do that right now, you'll see right here that these are not absolute. So as you select this, it'll go down to A4, A5, etc. This will go down to A1, E1, E2, A3, and subsequently this one will go down to E2, E3, E4, etc. So what we want to do is make these two items absolute so that they do not change as we drag it. So if you just select that right there and hit F4, it will bring up some dollar signs before the letter and the number. Do the same thing for this, and that will make those two figures absolute. And if we hit enter and just select this and drag it all the way down to 502, it should populate all the z-scores automatically. So let's just confirm. Let's say if we look at somebody from 80, we know that this person has a z-score of 0, which makes sense. And that's how you do z-scores on Excel.